A brief review of outcomes of group audiological rehabilitation for unaided adults with hearing impairment and their significant others. A study conducted by Habaneka and Kelly Campella. Purpose and method. GAR, or Group Audiological Rehabilitation, is a program, an audiological rehabilitation program designed to address workplace and home communication problems. The design of the present study was a quasi-randomized controlled design to measure GAR program outcomes. Pre-test post-test control group design was used. A pre-test was administered. A post-test was administered to both the experimental group and the waitlist control group, and then a follow-up. The follow-up was conducted 12 weeks later. Participants. N equaled 24 for the present study. The experimental group consisted of 12 working adults with hearing impairments that do not use amplification devices. There was also a wait list control group that consisted of 12 working adults with hearing impairments that do not use amplification devices. Now for more on the study design. The use of a waitlist control group was seen as an ethical decision due to previous research demonstrating that GAR is very beneficial for those with hearing impairments. It was considered unethical to have a no treatment control group. Therefore, a waitlist control group was given in the present study. An a priori sample size analysis was conducted to determine the number of participants needed to detect clinically meaningful effects. The result of that analysis was that there was a need to have at least 10 participants to do so. 34 couples responded to the initial outreach to receive participants for the present study. 30 of those 34 met the criteria for the study. 4 more couples withdrew from the study after pre-treatment, citing not wanting to be randomly assigned. 2 more couples had to withdraw simply because they were not available during the study period. This study also cited a random assignment constraint. There needed to be equal number of participants in each group. So they had to put 12 hearing impaired and 12 significant others in the study. The 2 main groups were divided in half, 2 waitlisted and 2 non-waitlisted groups that consisted of 6 participant couples each. The waitlisted group began the first session within 12 weeks of group allocation. The non-waitlisted or the experimental group began their first session within 1 week of group allocation. All couples or all participants had post-treatment assessment as well as follow-up assessment within their respective time frames. Now for a discussion of the measures. Several measures were taken in the present study. ASHA-approved hearing assessments were given to the participants. Also, the CPHI, a comprehensive paper and pencil 145-item self-report measure that is used to establish an inventory and quantify the effects of the hearing impaired, was also administered. It investigates environmental, behavioral, and psychological variables that contribute to adjustment to hearing impairment. Contains 5 factors: adjustment, reaction, interaction, communication performance, and communication importance. And it was reported on a standard Z-score scale. Factor scores have a mean of 0 and a standard deviation of 1. The adjustment factor reflected perception of negative feelings: anger, discouragement, stress, denial, withdrawal, acceptance of impairment, displacement, exaggeration of responsibility, self-acceptance, acceptance of impairment, and attitudes and behaviors of others. A high score on this particular assessment would equal good adjustment or communication. Low scores would indicate the need for clinical intervention. Results. Variables and data results were analyzed in various ways. On the basis of random assignment to groups, statistical analyses revealed no significant differences on any of the variables between the groups, thus suggesting a homogeneous participant sample. Those variables included age, pure tone average, speech and quiet, quick speech and noise test, and gender. For couples on the waiting list, no significant differences between pre-treatment CPHI factor scores and post-waiting list factor scores were found when using a repeated measures ANOVA for the AHI or hearing impaired or for the significant other group. Cohen's D effect sizes ranged from less than 0.001 to 0.24. Therefore, according to this measure, the couple's scores did not change significantly while they were on the waiting list. For the present study, in general, for hearing impaired in both groups, CPHI factor scores improved significantly over time, from the pre-assessment to the follow-up assessment. Post hoc testing showed there were significant differences at each assessment period, with moderate to large effect sizes. Additional analyzation of data revealed that participants in the waitlisted and non-waitlisted groups performed similarly. Also, there was a significant improvement from pre to post and to follow-up assessment, but there were no significant changes from post to follow-up assessment. Results were sustained, but neither increased nor decreased at follow-up. Results. If considering the null hypothesis that there would be no statistically significant difference between the control group and the experimental group, then the alternative hypothesis in the present study was accepted and the null hypothesis rejected. The experimental group showed statistically significant improvements that were sustained over time, showing those gains even at 12-week post-test. GAR proved to be beneficial to both the hearing impaired as well as to the significant other's third-party impairment. What is third-party impairment? Significant others tend to experience some difficulties associated with hearing as a result of living, cohabitating, being in a relationship with the hearing impaired individual. Those difficulties include difficulties initiating and maintaining conversations, the need to repeat and interpret for their partners, difficulty having to aid the hearing impaired person's daily life, including using the telephone, organizing social activities to accommodate their partners, and explaining their partner's hearing impairment. Effects of hearing impairment on marital relationships are not always very positive either. Reduced socialization due to hearing impairment is also not too uncommon. And now for a critique or evaluation of the current study. This study had great social validity. As outlined in the introduction, hearing impairment can affect job performance, at cost to the employer. It can affect interpersonal relationship satisfaction, moderate effects on mental health, including anxiety, depression, self-esteem, and subjective well-being, according to a study by TAMS that was cited, demonstrating an even greater impact on adults of working age. You may be wondering, why not just get them a hearing aid if they are hearing impaired? What is the benefit of doing GAR? Even hearing aid users can continue to experience communication difficulties. Making GAR an alternative or even an additional form of treatment for the effects of hearing impairment to both the hearing impaired as well as the significant other. Also, GAR can provide a sense of belonging when conducted in a group setting. In conclusion, when doing an evaluation of the present studies, procedures, measures, and results, I've taken the following into account. They used objective, quantifiable American Speech and Hearing Association approved measures to evaluate hearing, in addition to the more subjective measures. And even for the subjective measures, they used measures that have been demonstrated to be useful in previous research. The measures were taken in a sound controlled environment, which was important considering that this study dealt primarily with the hearing impaired. They also instituted random assignment and the distribution of participants into groups. Random assignment is a must for a sound experiment of this nature. Various analyses were conducted, including an ANOVA and post hoc. Additionally, only 2 trained audiologists administered the program during the present study. Factors such as this help to control the administration of the independent variable across participants, in addition for helping to control threats to external validity. The study's design controlled for necessary internal threats quite well. So as it goes for threats to validity, I think we can say they were pretty much under control.